Welcome into the first episode of the Grease Bowl podcast here. We got some rough, probably transitions coming up, but we're going to be working on that production value. Welcome in. Thank you for listening. We're going to be trying to get this going probably, weekly during the season. We'll see about the off season, what kind of schedule we can put together as I don't think it's very, there's not much going on until probably the preseason. My name's Blake. It is June 18th, and this is episode number 1. We're going to be covering quite a few things today. So I can kind of give you a little outline before we jump into our first topic of what we might be covering, just so you can kind of get an idea.
That is a disgusting act by Randy Moss.
Production value right there. All right, so we basically got 5 topics here that we're going to be discussing in this podcast. Number 1, we're going to be ranking our top 3 2023 competitors. Then we're going to be transitioning into our top 5 startup pick values. Who got the best deal? What player fell the furthest, in my opinion, at least. Number 3, the most volatile lineups in the league. Who might have the highest ceiling, but also, if a couple things go wrong, maybe a player does not follow that career arc that we kind of have projected for them, can absolutely tank someone's team. Number 4, we have my personal favorite teams drafted. And number 5, we're going to be kind of going over who I think has had the worst draft. Number 1 in our 2023 rankings for the Grease Bowl Dynasty League, we have currently Nucci up there. Now, as far as long term, the team isn't looking solid. He does have some young pieces, such as Justin Fields, Kenneth Walker, George Pickens, Isaiah Pacheco. Guys, I'm not too big of a fan of, honestly, but certainly could be some good core pieces for the team. What really brings them in is that he drafted McCaffrey in the first round, which is just outrageous. He got a decent deal. I guess he didn't take Hill too quick. He got a good deal on Adams. Fields in the second round. He reached on a couple guys. A couple guys fell to him. Overall, he's got a pretty darn solid team to be competing in 2023. His biggest weakness, however, though, is he didn't value his quarterback 2 position very well, and as well as me just absolutely snagging up all the quarterbacks late in the draft as they just kept falling. He's a little bit screwed here for that quarterback 2 position. He's just relying on Jimmy Garoppolo as the only other quarterback other than Justin Fields. So we'll have to see. Maybe he'll try to make a move for a QB2 or a QB3 as insurance. But if his lineup can stay healthy, he's got the weekly upside. Would just be a nasty redraft team. He's got about, 3 or 4 first-round picks as far as redraft goes. Also important to note, he did keep his 2024 first. Pretty valuable for him to be holding on to, as, he might have to be, maybe drafting a player or trading that away for a quarterback, maybe a tight end, as he's kind of just relying on Dalton Schultz. On his bench, though, he's got Darnell Mooney, KJ Osborne, Hunter Renfrow, some receivers that can be some good slot-ins in those last flex spots. Also has Devin Singletary, who could honestly see some work this year. Overall, not a big fan of his draft, but he nonetheless is going to be my number 1 in the 2023 rankings as of right now in the middle of the summer, so who knows. Number 2 here, we now have Cody coming in. I'm a pretty big fan of his draft, honestly. He's got some, honestly, really high upside players on his roster. I could be getting into that about the whole volatile roster debacle there. But Jalen Hurts as QB1, he's going to be outperforming most of the league's quarterbacks. Could honestly, it's not unrealistic that he outscores both quarterbacks on some people's teams, right? And Matt Stafford coming off injury, I mean, he could easily fill in as a solid, high-end QB2 this year. Going into the running back position, Travis Etienne, Dobbins. The running back position is very hard to get into in the summer here. We don't know too much about these guys. Dobbins, I can say I'm a fan of. Etienne, we're going to see how much his workload is. So, again, we don't really know what kind of production he's going to get from the running backs, but those could be two low-end RB1s right there. At receiver, Diggs, Waddle, Cooper, Mike Williams, all these guys could have wide receiver 1 performances pretty much in the same week. Like George Kittle at tight end, we've seen him rack in multiple touchdowns. And his last flex spot, Christian Kirk, just to even out the lineup. I'm a big fan of that starting lineup. I like the wide receiver heavy approach, and I see he could be a top scorer many weeks. On the bench, he's got some players on the bench. I mean, Jerick McKinnon, Jamal Williams, Antonio Gibson, Alan Lazard being the main ones. Definitely the last flex spots. Could be valuable. Also retained his 2024 first. Might be important for next year, although he does have a pretty young core. Cody, overall, solid team, solid draft. And at number 3, we now have Raider Hero. I mean, he's got Patrick Mahomes to pretty much just absolutely carry his quarterback room, as he has Kenny Pickett, Ryan Tannehill, Mac Jones, kind of just a committee of QB2s. Pretty much probably just going to be choosing the best matchup, I assume, week to week. He's got a tank running back room with JT, Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon. Could be 3 RB1s, possibly even an RB1 overall season by one of those running backs. And then we have Cooper Kupp, Keenan Allen carrying the wide receiver room. It's full PPR. These guys are going to be putting up numbers, assuming we don't see a huge drop-off from Keenan Allen. And then, how can we forget here? We got Travis Kelce stacked with Patrick Mahomes. Honestly, I don't know. 3 might be a little too low for Raider Hero here. He certainly doesn't have the youngest squad, but he has some nice pieces here to absolutely carry the lineup. I mean, even in the positions I didn't mention, Deontay Johnson, Mike Evans. On the bench, he has Samir White as Josh Jacobs' handcuff, Cole Kmet, Michael Thomas, and then he's missing that first-round pick, but we can see why with this stacked roster he has. Now, of course, we got some other pretty stacked lineups, in my opinion. Maybe because of a younger overall average age of the roster, they are not so much a favorite this year, but with a breakout, they could be looking at some pretty high upside for even this 2023 season. So, I don't know if this is in a specific order, I can't remember, but we have Trent with a very young core. I mean, wide receiver heavy, lots of potential in those players, specifically Treylon Burks, Jerry Jeudy, and Drake London. Even Devontae Smith still has a ceiling to reach. In fact, let me double that up again. Amon-Ra St. Brown could be a potential full PPR wide receiver 1 overall. I don't think it's too crazy if he's catching the touchdowns, which he doesn't have too much competition in that Detroit offense. So I really like the draft by Trent there. Josh Allen, Kirk Cousins quarterbacks. I mean, that could be the best QB room we see in this entire league upcoming this year. Another wild card, maybe dark horse champion for 2023 we have is Eric Easy 2. And, I mean, Joe Burrow, Geno Smith, that quarterback room, certainly get it done. Very solid running back room, topped with, Ramondre Stevenson, Nick Chubb. And, again, really solid wide receivers, Garrett Wilson, T. Higgins, A.J. Brown, with Mark Andrews at tight end. The only concern I have about this roster, the only reason I don't have him pretty much ranked at number 1 or 2 overall, is because this flex spot is a little bit lacking with the depth on the bench. Khalil Herbert and David Montgomery. We can definitely see upside for David Montgomery. Not seeing it for Khalil Herbert as of right now. Again, we don't know at this point, but if, for bye weeks, we don't really have much on this bench. It's going to be if Kondre Miller breaks out, that will certainly help him compete for this championship. So I see the path for him. I really like the draft. He is missing that 2024 first, but if he hits on those few rookie picks he had with Rashee Rice, Miller, and Spears, he could be looking at a very, very good future in this league, as he's got a fairly young team. One thing I did forget to mention here with Eric's team, though, is he is one of many people missing a quarterback 3. You can get away with it for sure, right? Quarterbacks don't get hurt very often, but the main concern is when you're competing, if you're not, sitting at number 1, number 2 overall, you're going to be fighting for a playoff spot, and those bye weeks are really going to hurt if you have to throw, a player like Alec Pierce in your superflex spot, right? So definitely got to keep an eye on a lot of players, not just Eric, but to see what they do about this quarterback 3 position, as it's obviously a very scarce commodity in Dynasty 12-man superflex leagues. And lastly, I guess you could call this our top 6. We've kind of expanded this into, but we have RJ Peterson, who certainly has the quarterback room. The one problem is, how much time is Kyler Murray going to miss? A lot of people think he's not even going to play next year. Personally, I'm more on the side. He's going to miss potentially 2 to 3 weeks. Maybe he's going to be on the PUP. I believe that's 6 games. And, that still leaves, 11 games for him to play. So I definitely like the quarterback room. The only problem I have with this roster is that there's a lot of veteran regression candidates here, I guess we could say. We got Aaron Jones, James Conner, even Austin Eckler. I'm definitely on Austin Eckler this year, but if these guys can stay in shape, kind of repeat what they did last year, he's going to be in good hands, no doubt. But at this wide receiver position, he is lacking, a true number 1 receiver. What I will say is having DK Metcalf and Terry McLaurin, these guys are pretty volatile. They can provide some pretty high upside, with some QB or wide receiver 1 performances or finishes at the end of the year. So, he's definitely a guy to keep an eye on here, as he's got plenty of depth on his bench as well. We will definitely see with RJ Peterson's team. Now we can talk about the top 5 startup picks, in my opinion. No bias at all, by the way. But no, I did try to not put my picks in here, obviously, because, I'm picking these players. I'm going to think that they're, I'm picking best player available pretty much throughout this whole draft. But we could start out with number 5. I got a tie for pick number 5. So we go 5 and number 6 here. And this is Kyle Pitts at 405 by Simon and Andrews at 404 by Eric. Reason why is because these guys, Pitts and Andrews, can be just flipped as far as dynasty value, depending on your team build. And they got them at back-to-back picks. Yeah, you can generally see them going, early round 4, as in like pick 401, or late round 3. It's a 1.5 tight end premium, nothing crazy. But having that, elite tight end on your roster, especially with Pitts, he could be playing until he's 33 like Kelsey, being a QB or a tight end 1. So I really like those picks by Simon and Eric. At number 4, we have Trey Lance at 808. Now, I just currently today traded him away. We will be talking about that and all the trades that have went down in podcast episode number 2, so make sure to be tuned in for that. But Trey Lance at 808 is insane to me. I completely understand if you just don't want to draft him, But for the whole league to not draft him when I've seen him go in the 4th, 5th round of startups all off season long is pretty awesome to see him drop to me at the 808. I mean, clearly I wasn't too high on him as well as I waited that long to draft him. But I mean, there's elite rushing upside with him, and he was a 3rd overall pick. He's gonna find us somewhere to start, at least a season to show off his talent. So I really believe in that. Number 3, again, no bias. We're doubling back with my pick at 701. I promise that's the last pick on the list of mine. And it's Javonte Williams at the 701. Now, I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Javonte Williams was a 3rd round startup pick last year. Maybe a 2nd? I can't remember. But, like, yeah, he tore his ACL early in the season. He completely obliterated his knee. Completely understand that, which is why I'll never draft him in the 5th round of a startup. But come at the 701, the running backs are honestly disgusting right now in Dynasty after Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet got completely ruined, in our opinions right now. So Javonte Williams is kind of a best option. I think he's just turned 23. Very young running back. For my approach, I'm not trying to win now. Javonte Williams, I'm very happy with at the 701. It's the furthest I've seen him drop in a startup. And we will move on to pick number 2 overall of what I think is the best startup values. We have Eric with Ayuk at 709. Ayuk, I think he's the number 1 receiver there as far as talent. Yeah, Debo was hurt last year, but he's not going to be seeing those running back touches with such a stacked running back room led by Christian McCaffrey. So without that rushing upside by Debo, I really just think Ayuk, he's not going to be a wide receiver 1 like in any season upcoming, unless he sees a change of scenery. But Ayuk can easily repeat what he did last year, as I think it was the wide receiver 16. So great value at pick 709 there for Eric. And number 1, we have DK Metcalf at pick 407. Pretty much a full round discount for, DK Metcalf still has the potential to be I think a top 3 overall wide receiver in fantasy at a given year. Completely dependent on touchdowns. He's got plenty of wide receiver target competition, but he also sees like the most red zone targets in the entire NFL. So if he converts, which I know last year he had a tough time doing, but with Jackson Smith and Jigba coming in, might open up a little bit more in the red zone for DK Metcalf, and we could see some positive regression with touchdowns. And getting him at the 407, generally I see him go from as early as 305. So he's, full round discount. I'm a big fan of that pick. JP did trade him away, I believe, a couple weeks ago. So we will have to talk about that in the second podcast as well. And now we can talk about a little bit of nasty boy honorable mentions here for some potential, valuable picks late in the startup. That's definitely where you can actually win these leagues. Maybe more long term, but if you look back in previous years, you can see some crazy deals like getting Jalen Hurts in the 15th round of a startup or something ridiculous like that, right? As an example, but we have RB Squishy with Irv Smith in the 18th round. As a Vikings fan, I know that Irv Smith is an extremely talented tight end. He can literally never stay on the field, but he is in a Joe Burrow-led offense where, obviously he's got plenty of target competition, but Irv Smith is kind of a touchdown monster. He can easily rack in 2 touchdowns in a given week, so can definitely see his ADP being much higher next year in Dynasty. So great pick by RB in the 18th round. We now have Nucci with a player that I like to scoop up personally again in the 18th round, really late, is Hunter Renfrow. He's coming, I think he was 2021 season, he was a wide receiver 1, believe it or not, just 1 year ago, an injury-plagued season. Obviously, I don't think he has that upside anymore, but he could easily be a serviceable wide receiver 3 And we're talking Dynasty start 10, right? So that could be a very valuable piece to your lineup in the 18th round. Then we have Villy with Laviska Shenault. Now this is just a huge dart throw, but we're talking 21st round. Laviska was drafted in the second round in 2020. Has not lived up to that hype, but with a new coach coming in Carolina with Frank Reich, we could definitely see a different type of usage, as they've already been talking about a potential Debo role for him. Obviously, he's not going to be perform to a Debo level, but if they just get the ball in his hands, he is extremely efficient per touch as far as fantasy purposes. So, that could really work out right at the end of the draft there for Villy. Then we have Browntown with Tyler Conklin in the 22nd round. Tyler Gronklin. Because, he's a beast, and I can't believe he actually goes to the 22nd round. I know CJ Uzama is still there, and I have no idea really what's going on with that tight end room, but it does seem like Tyler Conklin is the leader there in routes run for that team as of last year, and he's got Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball. So it could be a serviceable flex or just backup tight end in the 22nd round, and he might have another 3 years in him. So great pick by Browntown there. And then we have Simon with Noah Fant in the 17th round. Also a round 2, 2019, already said second round, draft pick. But Noah Fant, he has not lived up to his expectations, but he is extremely athletic. And he has plenty of target competition, which is why he's in the 17th round. But, we're talking start 10 again, right? Like, to be able to have him as a backup tight end or flex, you could easily see him racking in a touchdown and 50 yards, right? If he does, I think he must be on a contract here. I actually don't know about his contract situation, but honestly, a change of scenery would be the best thing for him. You see these tight ends break out so late, though. I think he's still 25 years old. For Dynasty, I think it's a great pick in the 17th round. So good job, Simon. Okay, let's now talk about, let's kind of mix two things in here. We got the highest weekly upside and our favorite, overall draft as far as value. All right, so starting with the highest weekly upside, we do have Cody there. He's got a young ascending team here, right? He's got some pretty big core pieces at running back, wide receiver, and Jalen Hurts to just completely anchor it down. Any given week, he could have 5 wide receiver ones easily in his lineup, and then paired with Jalen Hurts. If we do see a comeback season here by Matt Stafford, maybe in the 1 QB, he's not going to be that valuable. But if he's a low-end QB1, Cody has got a serious ceiling on his team. And, like we already mentioned, he could win the league year 1 and be repeating it for, years to come. So that's my opinion. We will see what happens. Things change very quickly in fantasy and Dynasty. That is kind of the beauty of it. But as of right now, it's looking like Cody had nailed his draft and has an extremely high ceiling. And on this note of things changing rapidly, ADPs flying up and down, that's what we could see with Trent's team. He's got wide receivers such as Jerry Jeudy, Drake London, Devontae Smith, Treylon Burks, who's currently on his bench, all who are ascending with advanced analytics. These guys are absolute monsters. Especially Drake London, could be an easy top 5 Dynasty wide receiver, even redraft if he sees the quarterback elevation there. Maybe a new quarterback in town or Ritter stepping up like crazy, but he's going to be dominating that wide receiver room. And then he's got a great quarterback room to kind of anchor it all down. He punted that running back position, but still has like some really solid running backs with Cook, Madison. He kind of hedged that, and it worked out well for him with that Madison trade. Kamara, he's probably going to be suspended, but that's going to be all right. Like, it's only going to be 6 weeks or so. We could definitely see Trent here having the best team for years to come, no doubt. And as an honorable mention, I'm going to throw my team in there. Going with the productive struggle, probably my favorite way to draft. I don't know if you guys can agree with that, what your favorite tactic is. Personally, I don't really even have a strategy going into these startups, but I generally just like to take the best player available for the first 2-3 rounds and then just see what happens. Like, if I got a team that I don't think is going to be able to compete, then I'll just adjust and just start taking the best player available or the best young players available. As I don't know, I'm not a huge fan of rostering fossils at running back or wide receiver personally, but we'll see how that goes for me. I've been making some trades. Cannot wait to get into that in the next episode, and we're going to be covering the rookie draft as well in episode number 2. So I think that's going to wrap up our first episode here. Production value is I probably sound so much different in every audio clip as I'm just trying to mess around with my setup here. So appreciate you guys tuning in. If you got any suggestions, just let me know. Talk about if you think I disrespected you, or if you liked something that I take I had on a team in here, whatever it is. Just let me know. But appreciate it, boys. All right, peace out.